Hey there, and welcome to the Conference Talk Show. My name is Tom Singer.
And I'm Elis Green, and we are back. Thank
We had a
goodness.
hiatus. We had a
Yeah,
little hiatus for a month.
a little summer hiatus. We have gone out and vacationed, and we have gone to our national event, which we're going to recap in a couple of weeks. And we are back with a pretty fabulous return guest.
We are. Today, we're going to talk about the future of events because there's a lot of things changing and everybody needs a little bit of a crystal ball to look into the future. And so, who better to look into the crystal ball than Crystal Washington? Now, if you don't know Crystal Washington, she is a futurist and a technology strategist. And companies hire her when they want their people to be more effective using technology. So, Crystal Washington, welcome back to the Conference Talk Show.
I made it back.
Yay!
Oh man, I did something right.
Oh, so many things right. So many things. So we were all together about a week ago at the National Speakers Association Influence 2021 conference. So we actually, like in real person, no screens, together. That was weird and good.
Yeah, it was weird and awesome over and over again. I went through cycles of feelings.
Right. So as we move back into the possibility of actually gathering together, of teams being back together, we're going to ask you to pull back that crystal ball and tell us, what do you think we've learned from the last 15 months being in these little boxes that's going to carry forward, and what are people hungry for?
Oh, so much we've learned. You know, one of the biggest things that I've noticed that people have learned is that they are capable of much more than they gave themselves credit for in the past with many things, but let's just focus on technology. And that is, for years, clients would hire me to come in and beat the drums, and then certain departments would say what they can't do. I remember doing a bring your own device event in Dusseldorf, Germany, well over a decade ago. And they were like, oh, we could never work remotely and allow people to use their own devices in different environments. And it's not possible. Woo. You know what we learned? It is very possible. All of our bosses and team leads that were like, no, our IT departments are like, it's impossible. It is possible. and we've learned that we're capable of learning stuff, right? Because I would always run into people that would say, oh, I've done it this way this whole time. For instance, I do a lot with realtors and financial advisors. And so realtors, oh, I've done it this way, and it's relationship building business, and I don't need all this technology. Guess when you needed this technology? When people were buying houses sight unseen, but they were doing walkthroughs with realtors via Facebook Messenger, Zoom, and FaceTime. Ta-da! So we've learned that we are capable of adapting and learning and using technology when we have to. How about that?
But Crystal, while it's true that we can do that, now that the world, at least in the United States, is opening up again, hopefully we won't close down again, but as we're opening up again, I see that there's a real hunger for people to get back to the office. My son-in-law is a mathematician. He is an introvert, and he liked being back in the office, not for the social side, but for the collaboration of being able to whiteboard with people and being able to get out of the house and just be productive while he's at work. So what are you seeing when it comes to people wanting to gather both in the workforce and at meetings?
I'm seeing that there are people that have very strong opinions on both sides of this equation. Like, I don't know too many people that are like, go back to work. I don't know how I feel in person meetings. I don't know. No, people are like, yes, we got to go back and collaborate and meet people. Yes. Or if they try to make me go back into the office, I'm quitting. There's all these jobs available. I can work anywhere in the U.S. from anywhere else in the U.S. I'm not going back. And we're seeing people quit behind that. So what I'm seeing is this horrible rift. And I honestly do not know what the solution is. I think it's going to vary by industry, because I suspect that it's easier to get financial services folks back in the office versus some technology organizations, right? Sure. So they're going to have a little bit harder time with some of their people. And so I think the big thing here is that there's no easy answer. There's no one way, because people have been, because of the trauma that we've all endured,
Yes.
it's either made us really hunger for human interaction, like just a sheer hunger, or say, you know what, this is pretty fabulous. I remember at one point during the pandemic, my husband and I were probably the most extreme in our family when it came to social distancing, just not because we were afraid for ourselves, but we were like mortified of hurting other people. So we were extremely stringent, living in Houston, Texas. And I remember my dad at one point calling saying, you said you haven't been more than even a couple blocks from your house. You're getting everything delivered. How are you doing mentally? And I said, have you forgotten that you used to have to threaten to spank me to get me to go outside and play with other children as a child? I've been training for this my whole life. So you have all types is basically what I'm saying. And I think the challenge is going to be what leaders are going to have to figure out, as well as some people running conferences as well, is how do we cater to these different demographics? Mm-hmm. Or our decision, are we willing to lose out on some talent? Are we willing to lose out on some members? Because I suspect what's going to happen, I don't pull out the crystal ball very often, but if I were to pull one out, I suspect we are going to see far less hybrid corporate meetings than we will an association. Because most of the corporate planners, you can mandate your people go. And they're not enjoying this hybrid experience. Most of my clients are like, as soon as I can get rid of this, it's going away. It's planning 2 conferences at once. Meanwhile, associations, they're being able to reach more members and they can get a little bit extra money. They're able to monetize this. And so I think we're going to kind of see this kind of different direction depending on what type of meeting. And then my forte is not education or government, so I have nothing to add on that because I don't know enough to be able to say what's going to happen in those kinds of spaces.
It will be
so interesting. It's interesting that you say that, because about 3-4 months ago, we interviewed Cindy Lowe, who is a meeting planner strictly for corporate events. She doesn't work very often with associations. And she said the same thing even 4 months ago, that corporate events are going to say, you get here in person, or it's a little bit of FOMO for their big events. They will also plan some smaller events that'll be totally virtually. But she made the prediction a few months ago that hybrid's not going to be as huge as we think, although it will exist.
Not in corporate, because they don't have to. They don't have, but I mean, it's like any kind of meeting. If you think about it, association, they are trying to draw people to the meeting. They have to cater. They have to be Burger King. You can have it your way. Come on, Meanwhile, corporate events are more like that really exclusive steakhouse where you're just trying to get on the list, or you just go in there. There's no catering to you. If it comes this way, you eat it this way, right? So it's different, and we're not going to be able to neatly tie all of this up into a bow.
Well, and I think we were all thinking that this is going to become more certain as time goes by. We're going to get back to normal. And that doesn't seem to be the case, that it is shifting. And what worked in 2019, we are not necessarily going back there. And I think there are some things that we learned along the way. You mentioned education. One of the things that has been very difficult is to get accommodations for students who might learn better having that lecture coming in because they're physically challenged to get to the classroom or whatever. Now there's no excuse. It's like, no, we know you can actually do that. There's no more excuses about that. As we move forward, we all kind of have this memory of what 2019 was like, and it was, so nice and so easy. It wasn't nice and easy necessarily. Now we're moving forward, looking to the end of 2021, 22. When you're working with teams, what is it that you are seeing is sort of the challenge that you have to get over right now?
Oh, there's a few. I think one of the biggest issues is silos. They already existed, but within a lot of organizations, when you've had people work from home, it's deepened the silos. It's cut off the communication even more, right? And so getting those lines of communication open, because most organizations were going slightly more towards a flat structure anyways over the last decade. And so you that's something you kind of have to fix, this whole silo effect. Number two, figuring out, what does collaboration really look like anymore? Does it require you to be in person? Is it a hybrid? If it's hybrid, how do you put everybody on the same footing? Because if you have everybody in one location in a conference room and then everybody else joining virtually from their own individual offices, that's a very different feeling than if you have everybody that's in that same building on their own computer separate, where everyone's on the same ground. And you don't feel like you're missing something. You don't feel like you're seeing them pass looks at each other. Was that a snide look at me? Even though it's because Bob's nose itched, but in your mind, because you're paranoid, because you're not in the room,
Right.
it's a very human thing. You're like, oh, wait, I just said, are they making faces at what I said? How do we connect again in a way that works for everybody? And again, we're gonna have to figure this out, and it's going to vary by organization, by industry. So we have a really interesting road ahead. I think one of the biggest challenges, though, that we have, Tom and Liz, is that when it comes to the field of foresight, which is futurists, they study foresight. So it's not really predicting, it's kind of charting out alternative futures that are likely to happen in case the first one doesn't, and being prepared for all the alternatives. Right. The thing that happens where most people have a hard time doing that in their own minds, because anybody can use this, is that we tend to predict what we want.
Yes.
We can't divorce ourselves and be objective enough to be able to look at what's happening around us and say, this is likely to happen. No, we take what we want to happen, and then we find things in the horizon, we call it horizon scanning, to justify or bolster what we want. And that's why so many individuals and companies right now are kind of in this really weird position, and they're kind of fighting against, the future is this, the future looks this way. Even when you talk about some of the past predictions that people have, it's based on what they want, not what the world is saying around them. I mean, even this is taking us slightly off track, but we're still going with technology. Even when it comes to cryptocurrencies, a lot of people's belief in or against it has to do with their own personal bias. They can't see what utilities are there. They can't see which things actually have no value. So if we can get past that, if we can make an effort at one point in time, let's say today for 5 minutes, I'm going to look at the future of this. What's likely to happen here? And let's take away what I want. What's everything around me saying? That'll help us be more prepared.
That's fascinating. And I would imagine takes a bit of separating yourself from the ego, as you're saying, that we all, we want things to turn out the way we want them to turn out. Tom, when we first talked to Crystal 108 years ago, at the beginning.
I'm that old now?
No, we're all that old because,
The pandemic has aged us all by 3x, I think.
Right. So way back when, Crystal really had an effect on you and I think all of the speakers who got to hear either on our show or on the program that we did for Influence 2020, because she really did say, hey, how about if we serve our audience instead of getting all tangled up in all of the technology? And for that reason, Tom,
I know, it's so exciting.
We're awarding Crystal the Conference Hero Award, our second award. Yes! So 4 people who have been influential over the course of these last 15 months in terms of serving our audience, in terms of making events more effective. You are our second recipient of the Conference Hero Award. Thank you for everything that you have done. Tom, I know we made a little list of all the reasons.
Well, the list is so long, but you really did have that attitude. And, speakers are a huge part of the conference world. And in addition to always having a message of get over yourself and let's serve clients, even before the pandemic, I would put that hat on you. But I think that what people may not know about you is you're a board member for the National Speakers Association. You actually joined the board like weeks before the pandemic hit, and the board had to roll up their sleeves and really serve the membership of the National Speakers Association, because everybody in that business was hit so hard, and you put in so much time and so much volunteer work. And at the same time, you were the host of the National Speakers Association's podcast, and you basically threw out all the interviews that you had done in advance and retooled it into be, your words, more podcasty, where you were interviewing people just a week or two before the show would air. So that everything that you did last year was very topical. And for those two things, we think that you're a conference hero.
Absolutely.
Oh, thank you. Okay, see, y'all, you don't know this about me. I'm a crier, but we're not going to do this today. Thank you. That was very kind of you. I'm going to try to not look like a raccoon for the next few minutes.
So, it's not fair of us to invite people on and then make them cry. That's...
No, I'm going to develop a little bit of a reputation of surprising people with awards. Apparently, if you were at the National Speakers Association, I was part of a ruse to surprise somebody else with something. But Crystal, as we look at this world of speakers and conferences, do you think people still need to get over themselves and just serve their clients as we go into this new world?
For sure. We have to, because things are shifting so much. Mm-hmm. I think that the old formulas that we have are broken. That recipe that used to work, we're in a different altitude, the cake don't rise no more. Okay, so we have to adjust some things. Anybody that bakes knows that actually does impact things. So you have to change it up. And I think we have to be more agile than ever before. I'll share, one of the challenges I've had is figuring out, at first it went from in person to all virtual. So our systems had to change. I'm a big systems person. So we had to change our systems, and my assistant shifted things. Well, now our challenge is, how do we operate in this in-person and virtual world? I can't do some of these virtual presentations in a hotel room, but if I just finished speaking the evening before and there's no flight out, so booking studios in different locations now and having all of these backup options, and it just requires that you be open. If you're having a hybrid event, most of our clients, they don't know what they're doing with hybrid events, and that's no knock on them. It's new to them too. And so bringing solution and insisting on things that's going to bring the at-home people in, we are required to be a new breed of person. We are not simply communicating for a living anymore. We're responsible for delivering a whole experience. And it requires us to just be open.
Do you think there's going to be a change in the relationship between meeting planners and speakers moving forward?
I've already seen it. My planner clients are relying on me much more. They ask for my advice on other things. They bring me into the AV team, and sometimes I'm very respectful in how I do it, but I push back with the AV team and say, hey, I know why you like this. And in my head, I say this, I don't say this out loud because it's a shiny button. But from a user experience standpoint, I'm always talking about user experience. Or sometimes they're terrified. They are terrified to try something new, but it's not about your ego. You know that it's going to deliver a better experience.
Right.
So I push back and I say, look, I'm going to own this. I own it. Don't worry. You don't have to worry about getting in trouble. I'm going to own it 100%. Just trust me. And so, yes, I think our relationship does change, but our relationship with ourselves changes too, because what we expect of ourselves to make an event go well, we can't just show up to the AV check and walk on stage like in the past. It takes a lot more pieces for in-person and virtual.
Well, that's one of the things that we've talked about that was a takeaway from Influence 2020 in doing all of those interviews, is that the sound check isn't actually for the speaker. And when we're talking hybrid, there are so many people doing so many things that, I kept saying, that speaker's only going to need about 5 minutes. And the AV team corrected me saying, yes, but we need 20. We need to make sure all of the pieces are going to work behind the scenes. So, yes, it requires some speaker patience in that sense.
And I do think...
No, go ahead, Crystal.
Oh, go ahead, Tom.
Go ahead, Crystal.
I was going to say,
no, go ahead.
I do think that, one of the hard parts is that because of this shift that's required of speakers, I think there's going to be a sifting down. We've already seen it. already happening, but there were speakers that were waiting for things to just get back to normal so they could just hop back on stage. Guess what? It ain't coming. It's just different now, right?
Yeah.
And so with that having been said, even those folks that thought that they were avoiding that whole having to convert or update, either you do it or you don't make it.
Mm-hmm.
So as we wrap it up, I was going to ask you to pull out that crystal ball one more time and look into the future of meetings and human gatherings. And what advice do you have for people in our business, whether they're on the speaker side or the planner side, or both? What advice do you have for them as we move into the next phase?
I would say start with the end in mind. Think about what you want your people to walk away with. Think about the feelings you want them to have. And then whatever you design, whatever you line up should plug into those. No matter what technology you use, how much or how little, whether it has to convert to virtual, whether it goes in a hybrid, whether you move it all to in person, that almost doesn't matter, which people are like, what do you mean it doesn't? That's a lot of, yes. What I mean is that as long as you have your end goal in mind, that will drive your decisions around everything else, because everything else will be directed at those end objectives and making sure that your attendees have those very specific feelings.
That's a very smart way to look at things. So, Crystal, thank you so much for joining us again. One of our favorite guests ever and our newest conference hero. Thank you for joining us. And Tom, we'll be back next week talking more about conferences. If you want to find us, you can find us at conferencetalkshow.live on Facebook. You can find us at conferencetalkshow.watch on YouTube.
And you can always go to our website, conferencetalkshow.com, if you want to look for ways to hire Eliz and I, or Eliz or I, to help you make your conference really, really pop.
And if you know somebody deserving of a Conference Hero Award, nominate them at conferenceheroaward.com. Tom, it's great being back.
It is awesome being back. You know, we started this show during the pandemic back in April of 2020, and we were doing it twice a week for a year, and then we've taken it to once a week. But it's become a really important part of my week. So, Eliz, thanks for being here again.
I missed you. I really did.
I missed you too. Yes.
So we'll see you next week. Have a great rest of your week.